The historical mystery. Why so many vanishings in certain valleys? 2. The Dunwell Hollow Clan 10 minutes. Settled till the 1790, grew increasingly isolated. Oral legends of the thinning, each winter. Stories of travelers disappearing. Evidence. Burned homesteads, mass graves found in the 1930s. 3. The Night Brethren of Cradle Gap 15 minutes. Death cult formed from an offshoot of a frontier church. Worship of an Appalachian hunger spirit. Ritual fasting and eventual cannibal sacrifice. Disbanded in 1904 after internal massacre. 4. The Hushed Paths 15 minutes. Modern disappearances 1940s-1980s. Testimony of hikers, old moonshiners, and hermits. Alleged survival of descendants of these clans. 5. Closing thoughts 10 minutes. The power of isolation, the hunger, literal and spiritual. Final unsettling rumors that some cult practices persist. Now, here's the opening narrative and first major segment, approximately 2,500 words to start us off. Candle 1 hour of forbidden Appalachian histories, cannibal families and the cults that devoured their own. Greater than dark, somber Appalachian banjo fades in. Host low, gravelly voice. Greater than tonight, we travel into the ridges and shadows of America's oldest mountains. Past crumbling homesteads choked in ivy, past moonlit hollers where even the wind forgets to whisper. We're going to talk about the secrets your grandparents wouldn't dare name after dark, of families that turned on themselves, and cults so hungry they ate what they held most dear. This is 1 hour of forbidden Appalachian histories, cannibal families and the cults that devoured their own. Part 1. The Dunwell Hollow Clan. Imagine a narrow valley deep in the Cumberland Mountains of eastern Kentucky, so deep the sun barely kisses its floor for more than an hour each day. They called it Dunwell Hollow. Settled around 1790 by 4 families fleeing tax debts and whispers of witchcraft from Virginia. They built cabins from chestnut logs, planted corn, and tried to vanish into the wilderness. But what they couldn't leave behind was hunger. Winters came early in Dunwell Hollow, and they stayed late. Livestock would sicken, crops failed, men went hunting and vanished, their rifles found leaning against trees, never a trace of the men themselves. By the winter of 1804, stories say they turned to the thinning. The thinning. Elders would gather, pick a child, an old man, or sometimes a stranger unlucky enough to be passing through. They'd be taken to the smokehouse, throat cut, body bled and butchered. Meat smoked and rationed. At first, it was done out of whispered desperation. By the 1820s, according to old ballads recorded by traveling musicians, the thinning had become ritual. Children learned to wait for the hammer on the door that might come for them. A single hymn survived in a faded family Bible discovered in a collapsed cabin in 1937. Greater than, take what the hollow gives thee. Bone and blood and kin. Hunger makes the flesh holy. Spare none from the thinning. Evidence in the earth. In 1937, during a WPA road clearing project, workers uncovered the ruins of 5 log cabins and 3 root cellars. What drew attention, though, was the discovery of 2 shallow mass graves. Dozens of human bones. Many bore cut marks consistent with butchery, long, clean slices where flesh had been stripped from bone. Some of the skeletons were children. Locals demanded the site be burned and buried. No official archaeological record remains, but an archivist named Sarah Penwell kept photos and notes, which surfaced decades later. They now sit in a locked collection at the University of Kentucky, viewable only by written request. What happened to them? By around 1850, Dunwell Hollow simply emptied. No records. No migration lists. Just the burned remains of cabins and legends. One story from a Civil War soldier who camped near the hollow tells of hearing voices at night, thin, quavering voices chanting, "Spare none, spare none." When he and another soldier went to investigate, they found only a burned chimney standing in the fog. The other soldier was never seen again. Locals today say the hollow is cursed ground. No one builds there, no game crosses it. They say, on certain winter nights, if you listen hard enough, you'll hear the old hymn drifting through the trees. Greater than, bone and blood and kin, hunger makes the flesh holy. Part 2. The Night Brethren of Cradle Gap. Cradle Gap, North Carolina, a narrow pass in the Smokies. In the late 1830s, a preacher named Josiah Turnbull led a breakaway sect of Baptists, driven by visions of an Appalachian hunger spirit. He called it the Eater Between Worlds. The cult forms. Turnbull preached that starvation was divine testing, and consuming human flesh, freely given, was the highest sacrament. At first, it began with fasting. Then the Last Supper ritual the cult would vote to sacrifice one of their own, usually the sick or elderly. Members would gather in the old meeting barn. They'd lay the chosen victim on the communion table, slit the throat, and drain the blood into earthenware jugs. The flesh was roasted and divided equally, so none would sin by gluttony. The communion of bone. Turnbull kept meticulous journals, many found in a sealed root cellar after the cult fell apart. In one entry from March 12, 1844, he writes, "We partook of Sister Magdalene's flesh tonight. The air is thick with grace. Her sacrifice lightens the road to heaven." Another, dated October 1846. "The children do not fear. They sing the hymns as the knife comes." Decline and bloodshed. By the 1870s, the cult dwindled. New settlers avoided them, food grew scarce. A faction wanted to abandon cannibal sacrifice. Turnbull's grandson, Elijah, refused, claiming the hunger spirit demanded blood. One night in 1889, during a winter of starvation, Elijah and loyalists murdered 6 defectors, including 2 children. The cult finally collapsed in 1904 when the remaining members turned on Elijah himself. His bones were found burned, bundled in a child's quilt. Locals buried the rest of the remains in unmarked graves near the old meeting barn, now long reclaimed by forest. Surviving relics. In the Asheville Historical Society, you can see a blood-stained hymnal, handwritten, its cover inscribed, "For the eater, that we may never hunger." A communion cup, carved from a child's femur. These artifacts are kept behind glass, but older staff sometimes say the hymn pages seem damp on humid days, as though the book still breathes. Break. Musical interlude. Droning fiddle, minor key. Stay with us. When we return, stories of hikers gone missing and whispers that the hunger never died. If you'd like, I can now continue into the next segments, about modern disappearances, alleged surviving cannibal descendants, and the chilling closing reflections to complete the hour-long episode. Would you like me to keep going? Or should I package what's written so far into a nicely formatted document script?